Okay, good day students. Right, so I first want to just start by going to the announcements. So just remember, every week I'm going to try and follow the same theme. So this is the live video that what I'm currently recording, and you can take this link and it'll take you straight to the content area that we're focusing on. But in essence, if we go to lectures and workshops, semester 1, we are still in the site data part of this course, but we're now going to start looking at starting to set up our CAD files. So your Revit or ArchiCAD file for this project going forward. Now I know that there was a discussion for design about what site you're going to select. So there's just some information I just want to draw you to explain what will happen in this location. Okay, so for now, I've given you some links to information so you can upload. So part of today's workshop, I want you to upload your preliminary site model that you need to start today. So your journal's going to start today and your Revit or ArchiCAD site model is going to start today. So you need to upload that to a folder for me today. So what we're doing now with the journal and with the site model is going to go hand in hand. Because remember, there's a lot of details that we need to investigate that you're not necessarily going to draw in CAD. We're going to draw that in your journal, but in CAD we're going to use a basic symbol to pick up those locations. So your journal and what we're doing in CAD now are going to go hand in hand. Okay, so I've given you some links, and I'll get to this in a minute, like the regulation library, etc., etc. But just note that in our project data file, so I'll go to Teams quickly. So in Teams itself, just remember, you've got a central database where you can start downloading data for this project. Okay. I want to add some more information to this location to make your life a little easier, but I think I just want to explain this again and then talk you through where the links are in theory. Okay. So in future, in the support channel in Teams, guys, if you are getting stuck with some concepts, take a screenshot and talk to the whole team rather, because there might be people in studio that might be able to assist you as well. This is where all of my assistants, so instead of sending 1,000 emails, all of my assistants will have access to this Teams page. So anything that happens, I'd much rather this be a group discussion rather than an individual the whole time, okay? Because unfortunately, I just don't have the time to get back to everyone's emails. Okay, it's quite hectic at the moment. Okay, so this is where we're going to do most of our correspondence and assistance. For those of you using ArchiCAD, I've got some great news. We've finally got an ArchiCAD specialist employed. He starts officially next week, Friday. His name is Silo, and he is in the study guide, but I want him to do a formal introduction of himself and his experience, just so that you'll get to meet him and know who he is and what he's about. Okay, but in essence, I think the first thing we need to just go and look at is I've given you a link to some regulations that we use when it comes to putting sites together. Okay, so a lot of the detail, if you walk around the streets, a lot of the detail that you see, like the road connections, the street edges, and all of that, is actually governed by the City of Tshwane, for example. So they've got a whole series of standard details that they allow you to access. So this is a great place to start. So when you are walking around and you're investigating your site, you're going to start seeing why some of the things are done the way they've been done. Okay, so this is the internet again is once again so fantastically fast. But I would recommend download this data and make it your own. All right, so go to this link, start downloading the data that you require. I might just use my machine to show you what's actually going on there. But you'll have access to the same information. So if you go to BIM library, so I've linked this to my machine. So I just want to show you, there's the Tshwane Town Planning Scheme. We'll get to this in a minute. But I think first I just want you to draw your attention to the Tshwane Road standard details. Okay. So when you're looking for services, when you're trying to work out where services go, straight away, as you open this document, this is called a road reserve, and I'll show you in the GIS software what a road reserve does. But just remember, it's not only a road is not only for cars to travel up and down, it's also a pathway for all the services. Okay, so you get the road, which is called the carriageway. Then you get designated zones where different services go. Now, this does differ depending on the street and what's happening in the street, but in a nutshell, just understand that there are dedicated zones for different services along a road. So that's, if we look in if you in the studio at the moment, you look up, we have the same scenario happening with service zones in a space. So if you look up, you'll have electrical, then you'll have mechanical. They also get dedicated or get designated a zone in which they need to operate. So this is a great document to kind of start understanding how these intersections are put together. Okay, so it's quite neat. You'll see like this is a very standard detail for stormwater connections, all of that kind of information you can find here. A lot of it is irrelevant, but I'll just like you to, so for example, like pavement areas, sometimes when there's a cycle lane, it just kind of shows you, if you are walking around the streets, sometimes there'll be a cycle zone, sometimes there'll be a pedestrian zone, but a lot of this detailing gets specified by the council, okay? And a lot of these, how the roads are put together, it's all detailed here. So if you're going to provide like taxi drop-off area, bus drop-off areas, this is how you don't waste your time trying to, the details here, this is what you must do in order to cater for a taxi bay or a bus. So if you've got any of those services around your site, you need to document them, or if you need to provide a service like this, you'll need to detail it as follows. Okay. All right, so just go and have a look at this information. Maybe a pedestrian crossing to access your site. You can instate those. Okay, so consider this information, the detail of mountable curbs. Okay, let's just go down. This is probably the most important part of this document for the time being, is how the parking will work. So if you're going to provide parking on your site, this is very strict. I wouldn't deviate too much from this, but technically this will cover all the scenarios when it comes to parking. You can park along the street edge, so you can provide parking along the street edge maybe, but that'll actually be done by the council primarily. But in essence, any parking on your site will have to conform to these standards. If you're in a basement, there is a rationale that you can use a different parking arrangement, but it's something that we'll explain later on when we start doing basements. Okay. If you're going to enter a site, these are certain rules on how you enter a site. So if you're going to make entrances to your site, just have a look at this and consider how people enter a site and move around. Okay, so it's very interesting. If you're going to make cul-de-sacs, the rest of the information is not that important, but what is nice, some of the services are starting to get detailed here. So if you walk up and down the street, you start seeing manholes. This will start making sense. Okay, so certain manholes, when you walk up and down the street, will have a label on them. If it's power, if it's stormwater, or if it's plumbing. Okay, sewage or sewers. Okay, so they've all got, at the moment it's a bit confusing because a lot of the manholes, the old cast iron ones, have been stolen. So now they a plastic resin that they use. But sometimes the labels are not quite the same. In the past, they were very deliberate about this is a sewer, this is stormwater. Okay. But just understand that there are service corridors that are running along the streets the whole time. Okay, so just remember that these zones within the street, so each zone is dedicated to stormwater, one's dedicated to, but stormwater, you can see straight away, is always designated to the road edge. Okay, carriage, right next to the carriage, because the stormwater comes off the road, mostly, and gets collected. So it's quite easy once you've walked up and down the street a couple of times to work out what's going on. And you'll start recognizing these stormwater culverts. You'll start recognizing these culverts. Okay. So just spend a bit of time, understand what they're trying to communicate in this document. Okay, but a lot of what we're going to detail now is based on this specification outlined in the standard road details. I've also given you, if you go back to that folder, I've given you Johannesburg's one as well. Their document, it's put together slightly differently. What I do like is you get a lot more, it's got a lot more it's set out better in the sense that it's got a lot more charts, but the diagrams, if you look at the diagrams, they're almost identical, okay? What I do like is the sidewalks are a lot better, where they sometimes have better details in that respect, but in essence, you're looking at the same stuff, but you get all the curve details, okay? A lot of this we have to start documenting in our site plans in any case, but I thought by giving you both of these, you can kind of see what we need to document with regards to our site information and site context. Okay, so we need to start picking up what's around our site. So the road edge, pedestrian routes, okay, services. Okay, so just have a look at this document as well. Both these documents are very handy. Okay, so just remember this information exists. Okay, good. Now, let's get back to, there's some additional information there as well, but just spend some time having a look. There's the building regulations. Okay, there's some standard details, designs, but this is more a European thing. But for now, I'll just focus on the City of Tshwane town planning scheme, the roads details, etc., etc. Okay. I just want to open up an example of a drawing of what we're starting to put together. So what are we trying to achieve? So if we go and walk around our site, we just need to start documenting the existing trees, the existing road edges, the existing parking. So for now, we're just capturing what's there. Okay. We're going to start exploring the sites. I know that in design you were given a brief about don't worry about the cadastral information, but what I want you to understand is the road edges. So let me just jump into QGIS. The road edges, so the road reserve, which is this area along here, like a road reserve, what I would ask you to do is maintain the street edge, but maybe consolidate the internal earths. So maintain the street edge, because that edge is actually very important. So if we went back to the document, that road reserve, you have to maintain this street boundary. But the internal boundaries, you can reconfigure to suit your site. But what we want you to understand, every earth gets a certain zoning classification. So if you are going to, in reality, a lot of these buildings, you find that they wouldn't rezone the land and reconsolidate the earths, because the process of doing that is quite intense, and it takes a long time to do. So a lot of the times they just ignore it, then they build over all three sites, but then you've got to do 3 applications, because each site needs an application at council for an SDP. So it does get tricky, but for the sake of what we're doing, just understand that we can consolidate sites, but just understand that in reality it's quite a process to consolidate sites and get sites rezoned. Okay, it's a lot of work. You've got to get a town plan involved. Trust me, it is a lot of work. Okay, so a lot of you have come and asked about the information that you need to add to these drawings. So I'm just going to go back. So basically, we need to, and I'll give you access to this legend as well. So these legends, you're going to see we need to start showing where the water connections are, where the sewers go. So where are these services located? So I'm going to show you a quick resource that we're going to use to start finding the bulk, well, I wouldn't say the bulk, but just, it's an overview or a rough guess of where these things are located. So I'm going to take you to a web source where we're going to start finding more of that information. Then I'm going to show you how we're going to consolidate everything. Okay, so if we go to, I'll give you a link to the service as well, but I think a lot of you have found the service. So if we go to Tshwane GIS, I'm going to go to, sorry, someone's just trying to phone me. I just want to go to the geology website. I just want to take you through the loop so you know where to find this data going forward. We're going to go to City of Tshwane. Now I have realized that the service is very slow. It's been a bit frustrating to use the service, but yeah, we'll just try and deal with it as we can. So if we go to map and data, so you'll see that it comes up with this other service where you can say I'm looking for regional maps or general maps. If you go to general maps, this is quite strange to understand. You can download some general maps here. I just want to go back to Tshwane. I'm actually going to look for some map data. So let me just go back one. There's this GIS data category. Okay, so what this allows us to do, it will actually give us access to certain maps. So if I just go to Cadastry, for example, you'll notice it allows me to search for certain information. But I did find, this is very strange, I don't know why they've done it this way. If you go to utilities rather, and you see the sanitation, stormwater. So for now, this is probably all we're going to get. So this is sewer. So this will take us to a new map viewer, which is very strange. I just want to show you how this works. It'll take us to a new map viewer, which is called Aegis 3. It's very strange the way they've done this. But if you give this a couple seconds, we'll start seeing the sewer information appear. Okay, I've just noticed that it's very slow. Okay. You'll see it's kind of, this is what we should be seeing. So I'm going to go to view a map again, and it should give us locations. Oh, it's been so slow again. Let me just try the other map quickly. I want to use this map. Okay. So I'm going to say create a map. So if I go to advanced mapping, it'll create a new map for me. So I've noticed that the service isn't well explained on how to use it. I had to play with this quite a bit to kind of get what I needed to. But you can see it starts creating a new map, and all of a sudden I've got a new layer called sanitation. And I remember I had to zoom out. Yeah, this was very frustrating. It took me to such a weird place. But I did manage to find some good data. So I'm just going to let this load. Give it a couple seconds. Okay, so give it a... And I'm going to get some more data. Now, what's interesting, this allows me to go and search for any other layer, which was interesting. So zoning. So maybe let's look for... I'm looking for stormwater. I might have to follow that other link, but I just want to show you the data that you can get. Sorry, it is very, there we go, there we go. And what is nice is they show you where the manholes are. Okay, so these little round circles are manholes. Okay, so this is where the sewers go. Here's your sewage connections. There's a big manhole, and it shows you the direction of flow. So that's interesting. Okay. So sometimes they do terminate in the middle of nowhere, you don't know where they're going, but it's just because the map is just quite slow in respects of trying to load. But what is nice, if you go to print now and you go A3 and you go sewer, what this does is it creates a map for us with all the relevant information of that area that we're looking in. Then I would export this as a PDF. It does this a lot, by the way, as well. I found it quite frustrating, but you know what, worst case, I'm going to use the snipping tool and I will snip this information because the GIS data I've got the building footprints from my GIS. I could scale this information in Revit now and then trace over that screenshot. Okay, so sometimes you're going to get good data, sometimes you're going to get bad data. I just want to see if this will work again because this thing did work. Let me just try this one maybe, because it actually gives you a nice map with the proper key. So if you're going to use this information on your drawing, it gives you a legend now. So it has been like this. Okay, it's been quite annoying. But you can add sanitation. Let me just see, there's stormwater. So what it allows you to do is you can add this to the map that you're working in currently. So it's very clunky to work with. But now I've got my stormwater and I've got my sewer. Okay. Maybe this is all we need for now, because now we can jump into Google Earth and now we can start extracting some more data. So let's just close this quickly. I just want to show you how the layer system works in this file. It's very, again, I must apologize, it's a bit annoying to work with. You can add in other data and you can move these layers around. So you build your own little layer system for now, and you can see it refreshes and it actually shows you the stormwater culvert sometimes. Okay, but sewer and stormwater. So this is all we're going to get from Tshwane's GIS for now. Okay, remember we're going to take a screenshot, and what's nice about the screenshot, it gives us a scale bar at the bottom here. So at least we've got a scale bar. We can now use this. You can see where all the stormwater culvert connections are all of a sudden. So they usually end at each street. There's a massive manhole or a pump station. It depends. Okay. But at least this is a great start. And the only other thing I'll add to this map will be restrictions. So I'm going to add one last layer. And that will be, so let me just click add. I'm going to say search for layers. Get rid of this. And I'm going to say restrictions. Okay. It was down here. It was down here. You can get road center lines, but restrictions. Guys, now restrictions. And if you click on some of this information, it'll actually give you some data back. Okay. Add to map. Okay, close this. But yeah, the service is very clunky and slow. Okay, restrictions. So let's just see what restrictions do. You can switch these layers on and off now, which is quite handy. So it's a bit like QGIS. So if you've been familiar with QGIS, to build this map, it's quite quick. Okay. I just want to wait for the restriction information to load for now. And I want to show you there's usually a correlation between your sewer information and restrictions, because they will maintain, okay, there's road restrictions, road reserves and restrictions. Sometimes there's sewer connections that have to be, so there is a restriction in terms of you can't build over that part of the earth because it's reserved for a main sewer that goes to the site. But I'll show you this road, I guarantee you, there's going to be a sewer, there it is. You see that there's a green line with a servitude line? Let me just switch off this map for now. Okay, I can't. So this green line is a servitude, and guess what? It coincides with a big storm water and maybe a road. They had to put that there because there's a big sewer connection there. So that reserve, that green line, is a road reserve. Here's another reserve. See, servitude, type road. So that was reserved for a road in future. So you can't build there. Okay, can't build there. So all these restrictions, these reserves on these sites, it'll tell you what it's for. Sometimes, not all the time. Okay, again, road servitude. Let's see if that was sewer. See, electrical. So there's electrical servitude. Okay, so you can't build there again because it's reserved for electrical infrastructure. Okay, so we've got good data, but the whole time, if you can't export a map, remember, just use screenshots the whole time. So just use the snip tool, export the data. Okay, I'll just open up Clip, and then we can use this data in Revit. Very easy. Okay, so I'm going to say Clip, clipping tool. So I'm looking for snip tool. So basically, this data that we are snipping, I just want to show you how to do this properly. You want the scale bar. This is enough information for us to use. You can save this now, so save it somewhere. I'm just going to save it in a location in our project data. I'll show you that in a minute. So this is that folder that you all have access to, where you can get the Pretoria CBD information for QGIS, but I'm just going to put some information in here very quickly, okay, just to show you how to work with the data. So there we've got a nice screenshot of the road restrictions or the reserves. We've got some sewer information. We've got some stormwater information. Guys, that's all you need. The last part of the puzzle, so you need to go to Maps. So Google Maps, for example. Now, if you're walking around, if you can't go to site, the best thing to do is grab this little man in Google Maps and drop it somewhere. Let me just switch on this layer, for example. Okay. So now you'll see these are mountable curbs because there's a lot of pedestrian access. Look at all the manholes down here. There's a water connection, guys. Straight away, check. There's a water connection. I'm looking straight at it. So these water connections have to be in a zone where people from the council can access them. They make them electronic these days so they can read them from a distance. But there's a water connection straight away. Voila. Walk around outside of a building, there's a lot of big connections where you get it in from the municipal. Those are big, they're obvious. Okay, they're quite obvious, but you just have to look for them. I just want to see if I can see any fire hydrant connections. I'll show you a substation quickly and where the power should come in or where the power should run. Because usually on what side of the street the substation is, you know where the power will come in. Basements. Okay, so just see how the road is treated over here, the existing trees, and how you like tree rings to maintain so trees don't damage the curbs. those type of things. I just want to show you if there's a little substation somewhere. I might have to go around the block here a couple of times. There's one there. Okay, that might be for telephones. You'll recognize, so some of it's data infrastructure, so telecoms. There's a little electrical substation. So my guess is there's an electrical service running here. That manhole might connect to the service of the electrical, but they get quite big as well. There's another water entrance, water connection. See that? There's a water connection there. Okay, so actually if you spend a bit of time walking around, you actually pick up a lot from Google. Okay, there's another substation, and you might find that'll be a power connection for the site as well, or for a couple of sites. Okay, so then your power will come in there. Okay, guys, so sometimes you just have to go there and walk around. So I think we've got an idea of how much data we can find using the resources. And in your journal, I would just try and sketch this thing and then do a bit of research about these substations. And they get these different sizes of substations depending on the power requirements for that block. So each block or each site might require different. You've got to apply for a certain amount of power. So if we, like the university for example, we have to apply to use that amount of power. Okay, so your building, the power needs, sometimes you have to make an application because it means they'll have to upgrade the substation for that whole block. You've got to help. It's contributions. You might have to help them pay for that service. Okay, but if you walk around, you'll start identifying these things. If you don't know what they are, take a photo, make a sketch, do a bit of research. Google Lens will search these things. But already, I found the water connection quite quickly. Then I know on that side of the street, the services are going to be for water, and you might find the sewer will be on the opposite side of the street. Who knows? Okay, so just spend some time. Use these resources. Okay. All I want you guys to do today, so this is an example drawing. I'm going to give you some of the information out of here, but this is an example of what you need to start setting up now. So you need to set up a site location plan, and that's just quite a broad, so it's just showing us the context of where your site is located, just so that the people at the council, when they look at this, they know exactly where your site is. It's just to aid people locate and familiarize themselves with where are you working and the surrounding context. Okay, it doesn't have a lot of information on, it just has a bit of earth boundaries and street networks. You don't have to put trees and all of that information on. Now, when you start putting your site plan together, you first start documenting the existing contours, the existing roads, and that's where you use an aerial image. You drop that in, scale it. You guys have done this last year to a degree, but then you start documenting the existing trees. The trees that need to be demolished, you'll do that later, but for now we're just documenting everything that's around your site, where the services possibly go. You see there's a manhole, existing manhole, existing manhole. Okay, you're going to get this information, but for now we're building this very preliminary. Okay, we're just putting all the information in a CAD file and we're starting to work. Most of this data initially is going to be 2D. So if I went to the site plan, for example, and I open up the sheet, I just want to show you this in Revit. You're doing the same exercise in Revit. This is all 2D information. If I go to a 3D view, there's going to be very little here in 3D for now. Just the site. Because the sites, that's the only informant in this model for now. Remember, the problem with sites is you want to separate your site model from your building model, because sometimes if you're doing a site intervention, there's a whole bunch of levels that shouldn't pollute your building model. It's actually a separate project. Okay. You want to keep these things separate. You will link them both ways, because this might inform that and might inform that, but there can also be 2D drawing work that you're pulling in from an external source. Okay. You're going to be getting a lot of information from surveyors. So a lot of that information just plugs in. We make it look good for ourselves. Okay. All the services actually come in from a surveyor. 90% of that information will come in from a surveyor, in essence. But we are just using some aerial imagery to try and work out where that stuff goes. Okay, it's very straightforward. But what is important, we're starting to label the site boundaries. There is information missing here. Last year, you guys had to do the site boundaries. You had to give me the dimensions of that. You had to make, there's a surveyor's peg that we've got to show where that goes. Okay. But for now, this is a great start. If a lot of you can put this information preliminary together for next week Friday in CAD as a 2D drawing, happy days. You're using your journal and you're using CAD together. Just remember your journal, you might take a photo of that water connection and you might sketch it out in your journal, but we use symbols in CAD. Okay, so we don't waste our time drawing a lot of detail, we're using symbols. Okay, but at least in your journal, you're starting to connect the dots. Oh, that red pipe thing, that's the water connection. Sketch it out. Why do they take it out the ground and put it back in the ground? Somebody's got to go and stand and read the meter. That's why they do it. Okay, simple. Guys, so for today, start putting your site models together. I've given you that process of how to export the DXF information and how to plug it into Revit. Okay, so for today, we start slowly documenting. I want you to save that file that you've done today. So the start of the model, you need to upload it for me as well. Okay, so on Teams, there's a link where you save your preliminary CAD file. So if you go to support shared, guess what? There's going to be a students file section. And a lot of you have already given me your structural model. So check, it's full of data. Nice. Now I want your site model information. Okay. There's one more resource that I want to explain as well. So in the past, we used to teach you guys AutoCAD to process some of the site data first in CAD. Because civil engineers work in Civil 3D and it's all AutoCAD. So if you wanted to fix their data, because the site drawing when you get it is atrocious, we used to spend a lot of time fixing those files to make it read in Revit correctly. But there's a nice little workaround and a trick that you can use. So Rayon, and a lot of you used Rayon last year, for basic drafting. So what I've started doing is I'm going to give you a good library to work with, okay? But for now, I just want to sign in. I want to show you what, I've shared this by the way. You all have access to this on ClickUp. I just want to show you the data that we use to start putting this together. Shucks, let me just stop this, otherwise everyone's going to get my password. Okay, a site plan is just a combination of a series of little blocks that we use. So typically when we started a project, we had a library of information. So I would start back in the day when we had AutoCAD. We would start, this is where we would start. We would start with a file full of symbols, blocks. And then all we did was we took all those symbols and blocks and we just put them together in a big, it's like putting a big pattern together. So this is how we would start. This is our file. So I know turning circles, so we could plan how if we could turn into a site, if you are going to park on a site. Now I am sorry that this is a UK thing. I have to update this to a South African thing. But what I do like is look at all the symbols that you can access already for existing trees, proposed trees. There's a lot of good data here. So like parking bays, cycle bays. Okay, so we would start with this and just assemble all this stuff together to make up a site plan. A site plan is just a whole combination of these blocks. But what I do like is, in Rayon, if you want to start exporting this stuff to AutoCAD and plugging it in, I'll also show you how to make these blocks in Revit as well. So it's something that I have to do. But if you go to layers and you start a new model layer, I wouldn't export this whole thing. It'll be quite heavy in Revit and ArchiCAD. So if you go to model canvas, you can start extracting information from here, so especially the trees and plan. If I just want this data very quickly, I can just go Control C, put it in a new canvas, and then export this canvas. I would export this information to Revit and then make it a Revit object. Okay, but that's exactly what the student's done. If you double click and you go, and these are all just little blocks that she's used. Okay, so let me just go to site plan. All of these are just symbols. Okay, most of the stuff is symbol. That's a symbol. She's made them in groups, which is correct. So these are all just symbols that can adjust quickly. Okay. Very straightforward. Try and pick up street furniture. So if there's street benches, so it's street furniture as well. It's not only just services and that, it's street furniture, trees, that kind of information. But today, try and start putting these files together. We are here to assist you to try and put these files together. You remember how I exported the stuff from QGIS last week? Follow the same workflow. If you need help, I'll help you do that. Okay. All right. I have given you access to that data, by the way. So one last little tip for the day. We go back to Teams. Let me just go back to this location. So let me just go back to Teams. So if you go to module files for this project data, everything that I'm doing to date, the example files and everything I want to give you, I'm making separate folders where you can get this export data. So here's the DXF file that you can bring in, the screenshot. So this data you can plug in just to play around in Revit and try and, okay. But you can convert all this information in Revit to a Revit line work as well. Just comes with a catch though. And I'll explain that later on. But for now, start this process, start working with this information. Just remember how to do this. I just want to go back to ClickUp. How to put all this data together. If I close this section and we go to site model, here's a step-by-step guide. There is one for ArchiCAD as well. How you set up your site location plan. So this is how you go and set up, how you use detailed line work. So these videos cover how you go about putting your site plan together. So in these videos it's covered, so I'm not going to do this again, but this is where you go and access those videos and work through the information that you need. But each of your sites are quite unique, so if you are getting stuck, call me and we'll help. Edmund and Chanel are here to help you as well. They do this every day. They're good. Better than me. All right. So at the end of the day, reach out, ask for help, use Teams if you've got any questions. Okay, so my assistant's going to assist you. Thank you for your time, and that's the stream. Okay, any questions, any questions, any questions, any questions? Whoa.